Sophia always walked the same route home from school. Her house was just a few blocks away, past the big library, around the old clock tower, and through the park. She loved this path, especially because of the little bakery on the corner where Mrs. Baker always gave her a cookie. The smell of fresh bread and pastries wafted through the air, making her feel warm and happy. She would often stop to chat with Mrs. Baker, who was like a grandmother to her, always ready with a kind word and a sweet treat. One cloudy afternoon, Sophia had stayed back at school to help her teacher Mrs. Brown. Mrs. Brown had been organizing books for the library, and Sophia loved reading. By the time she left, it was later than usual. She hurried down the familiar streets, hoping to still catch Mrs. Baker before the shop closed. The sky was getting darker, and the wind was picking up. Sophia pulled her coat tighter around her, quickening her pace as the first drops of rain began to fall. As Sophia reached the bakery, she saw that the lights were already off. Disappointed, she turned to continue her walk home. That's when she noticed something strange. A man was standing across the street, looking lost. Sophia had never seen him before. He wore a brown coat and a hat that shaded his face. He seemed worried, glancing around as if searching for something or someone. He looked up and down the street, his movements anxious and hurried. Sophia felt a tug at her heart. She wanted to help but wasn't sure what to do. She decided to cross the street and ask if he needed assistance. Just as she took a step forward, a car zoomed by, honking loudly. She jumped back in surprise, and by the time she looked again, the man was gone. She stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where he had been, feeling a strange sense of loss. That night, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. She wondered who he was and why he seemed so worried. As she lay in bed, she drifted into a restless sleep. Her dreams were filled with the image of the man in the brown coat, standing alone and looking lost. She saw his face clearly in her dream, a face etched with worry and sadness. He seemed to be calling out to her, but she couldn't hear his words. In her dream, the man spoke to her. "If only you had arrived a minute earlier, you could have saved me," he said with a sad smile. Sophia woke up with a start, her heart pounding. What did he mean? Saved him from what? She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense out of the dream. It felt so real, as if the man was truly reaching out to her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had missed something important. The next day, Sophia tried to put the dream out of her mind. She went to school, played with her friends, and read her favorite books. But every time she walked past the bakery, she felt a pang of guilt. What if she had been able to help the stranger? She kept looking around, hoping to see him again, but he was nowhere to be found. She asked Mrs. Baker if she had seen the man, but Mrs. Baker only shrugged, saying she saw many people every day. Days turned into weeks, and Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she had missed something important. She started to ask around if anyone else had seen the man. Mrs. Baker remembered him vaguely, saying he had come in asking for directions but left quickly. No one else seemed to know anything about him. Sophia felt more and more restless. She couldn't concentrate in school, and her friends noticed she was quieter than usual. Sophia's dreams continued to be haunted by the stranger. Each night, he appeared, always saying the same thing, "If only you had arrived a minute earlier." Sophia felt a growing sense of responsibility. She needed to find out who he was and what had happened to him. She couldn't let it go, feeling that the man was somehow depending on her. She decided to take action, to do something to ease her mind and help the stranger if she could. One day, she decided to visit the library after school. Maybe there was something in the old newspapers or records that could give her a clue. Mrs. Brown was happy to help and showed her how to look through the archives. Sophia spent hours reading through old articles, hoping to find a mention of the man. She pored over the newspapers, her eyes scanning the pages for any hint of the stranger's identity. Finally, she found something. An article from a few weeks ago reported a missing person. The description matched the stranger she had seen. His name was Mr. Thomas, and he had been last seen near the bakery. The article mentioned that his family was very worried and had been searching for him everywhere. Sophia's heart raced as she read the article. She had seen Mr. Thomas the very day he went missing. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. She had seen Mr. Thomas the very day he went missing. She quickly copied down the contact information from the article and ran home. That evening, she told her parents everything. They agreed to call the number and speak to Mr. Thomas's family. Sophia felt a mixture of hope and fear. She wanted to help, but she was also scared of what they might find. When they reached his family, they were incredibly grateful. They explained that Mr. Thomas had been suffering from memory loss and had wandered away from home. They had been searching for him for weeks with no luck. Sophia's heart ached, but she also felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe she could still help. She couldn't stop thinking about the man's sad eyes and the way he had seemed so lost. Sophia's parents arranged to meet Mr. Thomas's family the next day. They hoped to search the area where Sophia had seen him. Sophia felt nervous but determined. She wanted to make things right. She couldn't let go of the feeling that she had a responsibility to help. She didn't know why, but she felt deeply connected to Mr. Thomas, as if their fates were intertwined. The following morning, Sophia, her parents, and Mr. Thomas's family gathered near the bakery. They divided into groups and started searching the streets, calling out his name. Sophia retraced her steps from that day, hoping to find any clue. She walked slowly, looking carefully at every corner, every bench, every shadow. She felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if she had been here before in a dream. Hours passed with no sign of Mr. Thomas. Just as the sun began to set, Sophia spotted something near the park. It was a small, brown hat, similar to the one Mr. Thomas had been wearing. She picked it up and called out to the others. They rushed over, hope rekindled in their hearts. They followed the direction where the hat had been found, searching deeper into the park. Finally, they found Mr. Thomas sitting on a bench, looking confused but unharmed. His family ran to him, tears of relief streaming down their faces. Sophia watched as they hugged him tightly, feeling a sense of joy and peace. She had done it. She had found him. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing she had made a difference. She watched as Mr. Thomas's family thanked her over and over again. Mr. Thomas's family thanked Sophia repeatedly. They explained that he had been trying to find his way home but got lost. Sophia was just glad that he was safe. That night, she slept soundly for the first time in weeks, her dreams no longer haunted by the stranger. She felt a sense of closure, knowing she had done everything she could to help. She learned that even small actions can make a big difference. From that day on, Sophia always made sure to be kind and helpful to everyone she met. She learned that even small actions can make a big difference. And though she never saw Mr. Thomas again, she always remembered him and the lesson he taught her. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the experience, knowing it had changed her forever. Sophia's life returned to normal, but she never forgot the man in the brown coat. She often thought about him, wondering how he was doing. She hoped he was happy and safe with his family. She felt a special connection to him, knowing they had shared something profound. She realized that life was full of unexpected encounters and that every person she met had a story. Sophia continued to visit the bakery every day. Mrs. Baker always greeted her with a warm smile and a cookie. They often talked about the day they had found Mr. Thomas, remembering how worried they had been. Mrs. Baker praised Sophia for her determination and kindness, calling her hero. Sophia felt proud, but she also knew that she had simply done what was right. As the years passed, Sophia grew up, but she never lost her sense of compassion. She continued to help others, always looking out for those in need. She became known in her community for her kindness and generosity. People often came to her for advice or support, knowing they could trust her. Sophia felt fulfilled, knowing she was making a difference in the world. One day, many years later, Sophia received a letter. It was from Mr. Thomas's family. They wanted to thank her once more for what she had done and share some wonderful news. Mr. Thomas had fully recovered from his memory loss and was now living a happy, healthy life. They invited Sophia to a special celebration in his honor, hoping she could join them. Sophia felt a wave of emotion as she read the letter. She remembered the day she had found Mr. Thomas and the impact it had on her life. She decided to attend the celebration, excited to see Mr. Thomas and his family again. She wrote back, accepting the invitation, and started making plans for the trip. When the day of the celebration arrived, Sophia traveled to the address provided. She was warmly welcomed by Mr. Thomas's family, who treated her like a long-lost friend. The celebration was filled with joy and laughter, as people shared stories and expressed their gratitude. Sophia felt a deep sense of connection and happiness, knowing she had made a lasting difference. Mr. Thomas himself approached Sophia during the celebration. He looked healthy and happy, a far cry from the lost man she had seen years ago. He thanked her with tears in his eyes, expressing his eternal gratitude for her kindness. Sophia felt overwhelmed with emotion, realizing the profound impact of her actions. They talked for hours, reminiscing about the day they had met and sharing their life experiences. As the celebration continued, Sophia met many people who had been touched by Mr. Thomas's story. They praised her for her bravery and compassion, calling her an inspiration. Sophia felt humbled and grateful, knowing that she had simply followed her heart. She realized that the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out, touching countless lives. After the celebration, Sophia kept in touch with Mr. Thomas and his family. They became close friends, visiting each other often and sharing in each other's lives. Sophia felt blessed to have such wonderful people in her life, knowing that their bond was forged through an act of kindness. She cherished their friendship, knowing it was a rare and beautiful gift. Sophia's life continued to be filled with acts of kindness and generosity. She volunteered at the local shelter, helped her neighbors, and always looked for ways to make a difference. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing she was living a life of purpose and meaning. She often thought about Mr. Thomas and the lesson he had taught her, carrying it with her in everything she did.